ASMR Magical Tools. So I'm going to be clearing the space. And I do that at the very beginning so that if it's loud for you, that the effect of that will be diminished. And you can skip over it if you don't want to hear that part. However, I felt it was important for clearing the space. And I will, of course, be burning some of this black magic incense. Oh, the stick is all wonky. Look at that. See, it's like all bent. That's okay. It should still work. There we go. Softly, softly, softly. Softly, 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 light the incense. And I just want to kind of open up the space. So this forecast is going to be for the week ahead, beginning on September the 20th and ending on the Sunday, which is September 26th. We do have a couple of things going on this week that I wanted to mention at the top of the video. That is a full moon in Pisces on Monday, September 20th. And then Mercury will be going retrograde for those of us on the west coast of the United States on Sunday, the 26th. And that means that Mercury will go retrograde for those of you on the East Coast early the following morning, Monday the 27th. And that will be into next week's forecast. But because it isn't neatly separated, I'm going to mention it here at the top of the video. So, what does our week look like? Remember that we've got a lot of these outer planets kind of clustered over here. Jupiter and Saturn retrograde in the sign of Aquarius, Neptune retrograde in Pisces, and remember that we will have that full moon conjunction with Neptune retrograde in Pisces. We have Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, also retrograde. Uranus in Taurus, also retrograde. Let me just make sure. Yes, we do have a lot of retrogrades right now. Some of these planets will be going direct come October, so that will be somewhat of a relief, possibly. Although the strength of a retrograde can sometimes cause unpredictable effects in our lives, but will also facilitate positive change and movement. It really depends on how you are cultivating your vibration, of course, and what you are striving for in your own life, and if your motivations are aligned with your destiny. And then remember that we have the inner planets here. Venus moving into the tricky sign of Scorpio last week, I believe, or maybe the week before. Mercury, as I mentioned, is going to be going retrograde and will be doing so in the sign of Libra. Mercury retrograde in the sign of Libra. Any communication about legal cases, or perhaps about partnerships as well, that you've been waiting for, could be coming back around during this Mercury retrograde. It is a time both when things return from the past and also when new ideas have a difficult time taking hold. That's not to say that you shouldn't explore these things anyway. Just a caveat, not to expect them to be particularly long-lasting necessarily. If they do, that's great, but if they don't, it's better not to be counting on it. And of course, we had Mars moving from the Earth sign of Virgo into the cardinal air sign of Libra. People fighting for what they feel is right. So let's start talking about Monday, September 20th. As I mentioned, there will be a full moon in Pisces. Additionally, the moon will be in the final lunar mansion, the 28th lunar mansion, which is Baten al-Hut, or the belly of the fish. Belly of the fish, the belly of the fish. Now, actually, the star, which denotes this lunar mansion, is located in the constellation of Andromeda. This lunar mansion has themes related to the realization of potentials, cohesion, gathering, culmination, attainment, joy, harvesting, and is also good for making wishes. Now, yes, because this lunar mansion happens to be falling on our 2021 Pisces full moon, that does mean all of these traits will be amplified. All these themes will be amplified at this time. And in fact, very early in the morning, so this is going to be around 4:40 on the west coast and 7:40 on the east coast, we're going to see the conjunction in the sign of Pisces between the moon and Neptune. This is a very powerful time for your intuition, for dream work, and for anything else where you need the flexibility of imagination. Imagination, imagination, imagination. Monday is also going to be when Mercury enters its storm prior to its retrograde. So work primarily on things which are already fairly established in your life for the best results. That's not to say, however, that you can't write these ideas down. You never know where they might lead. In the middle of the morning, the moon in Pisces, is going to quincunx Mercury in the sign of Libra. And there may be some communication coming in about a partnership, a legal case, a contract. The moon in Pisces may be driving this action, so there might be some recollection of things past, drawing on nostalgia. There might be aspects of this that are related to incarceration. Now, this isn't going to be for everyone, but Pisces, governing the 12th house, can also have to do with matters of incarceration. If you have been waiting for some communication related to that, that could be coming up on Monday, September 20th. Also in the middle of the morning, Venus, which is now in the sign of Scorpio, is going to quincunx Chiron in Aries. Chiron in Aries. And remember that we have this Chiron retrograde in the sign of Aries, testing the parts of ourselves we feel like we've healed, related to selfish behaviors, related to beginning things and not finishing them, and also possibly related to immaturity. Venus in Scorpio has a tendency toward emotional manipulation. Scorpio is a very hidden and a very sexual energy, so tread lightly. Now, it is in the middle of the morning, so you will have the benefit of daylight's lucidity when dealing with this transit. but that quincunx might drive some action in the middle to the later part of the morning on Monday, September 20th. Not too long after that transit, there's going to be a sextile, and this is between Pluto, which is in the sign of Capricorn and is retrograde at this time, and the moon in Pisces. This is going to be a very harmonious kind of a transit, being a sextile. Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, there being a lot of volatility regarding the things around you that you are able to utilize to your benefit. Capricorn being a very practical sign and also related to one's career. That moon in Pisces might open you up to brand new possibilities. Remember the lunar mansion we are dealing with, Batan al-Hut, being very conducive to the realization of potential and to granting wishes. So that you may be able to use this to your advantage toward the middle of the day on Monday, September 20th. Later into the afternoon, there's going to be an air trine, and this is between Mercury in Libra and Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. So this Jupiter in Aquarius can have to do with expansion of one's social groups. Because of the nature of retrogrades, some of these expansions might be temporary or might be leading you into other things. So it can be social groups, can also be related to social media, where we have Mercury in Libra in its storm. This could be a temporary influencer contract or some other means of expanding social groups or social media related to signing a contract or communication about a new partnership. Jupiter is a very business-oriented planet, but this could also have to do with romance, if that is a focus for you right now. The exact time of the full moon opposition is going to be 4:55 p.m. on the west coast and 7:55 p.m. on the east coast, and that would be pertinent to the United States. This will also be when the moon is void of course and full of possibility. The sun in Virgo shining full light on any fantasy, any interpretation of dreams, or any other psychic messages that you have been getting from the full moon in Pisces, illuminated by discernment attention to detail, and analytical thinking coming from the sun in Virgo. And later into the night, the moon will be entering the sign of Aries. Aries, 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 Aries. So now let's talk about Tuesday, September 21st. The moon will be in the first lunar mansion, which is called Al-Sharatayn. The star which denotes this lunar mansion is Sharatan in the horns of Aries, and is called the two signals. Two signals. The themes related to this lunar mansion related to the divine mind, primal transmission, the power of creation and destruction. It's an active energy and a dynamic force. This can be good for movement, but might not be as good for other things. So keep that in mind. If there's anything that is stuck, that needs to be jarred loose, that is the best way to use this energy. Very early in the morning, so around 4 on the West Coast and 7 on the East Coast in the United States, there will be an opposition. And that will be between the moon, which is now in Aries, and Mars, which is now in the sign of Libra. And remember, Mars in Libra is a very aggressively justice-minded energy, determined toward fairness and equality, but not necessarily discerning in the best way what that might be. With the moon in Aries, we are bringing to light matters related to action, certainly. Also matters related to the self and the emotional states of the self. And these emotional states of the self as they relate to this Mars in Libra energy, related to justice, related to our own place in the world and equality as it relates to us. Toward the middle of the morning, the moon in the sign of Aries is going to sextile Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. Retrograde in Aquarius. This Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, resistance of the hierarchy to change in the status quo, lest they be toppled from their thrones. Now, the moon in Aries, related to emotional states of the self, there may be ways that appealing to sense of self can aid in these larger issues. We're going to have a conjunction in the evening hours between the moon and Chiron retrograde in Aries. And this is going to give you an opportunity for meditation, possibly, and to touch up around the edges any changes you have been making in your own life related to selfish behavior, beginning things and not finishing them, and also related to immaturity. I'm not saying those are the only traits that Aries has to offer, but typically with Chiron healing energies, we are looking at the parts of ourselves that we would like to improve. And so that's why I am bringing up those traits over and over again as it relates to Chiron, and especially when it's retrograde in the sign of Aries. And finally, in the later evening hours into the night, the moon in Aries is going to quincunx Venus in the sign of Scorpio, And remember, this Venus and Scorpio energy is somewhat the darker side of human sexuality. Can also relate to emotionally manipulative behaviors. So be very careful, because where we have this moon in Aries, there could be potential for selfishness to creep into one's emotional states, or being overly preoccupied by things related to the self as regards your emotional states. There is also, of course, the potential for great healing energies there as well. So now let's talk about Wednesday, September 22nd. We will be in the second lunar mansion, which is Albutane, and that is the belly of the ram. It is a star located kind of in the hip region of the constellation of Aries. This is a good time to seek favor or appeasement. It has to do with the universal soul. We are all connected. We are all interconnected. Serene, sovereign power, reconciliation, and pacification. So in the early to middle part of the morning, Mercury in its shadow period in Libra is going to form a square with Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. And remember that Pluto is retrograde right now. So this could be work contracts. And keep in mind that because we have two retrograde planets squaring each other right now, this contract could be heavily contested if you end up signing anything the morning of Wednesday, the 22nd. Wednesday, the 22nd, I almost neglected to mention some very important things going on today. It is the fall equinox. So, the day of the year in the fall, when day and night are at their most equally spaced, the most equally spaced. For those of you following the Wheel of the Year, this is Mabon, and the sun is going to be entering the sign of Libra. The sun will be entering Libra. So now we have Mars and Mercury in the sign of Libra with the sun. And the sun is going to be entering Libra a little bit after noon on the west coast and a little bit after 3 p.m. on the east coast. In the later part of the afternoon into the evening, the moon, which is in Aries, is going to sextile Jupiter retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. Retrograde in Aquarius, 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 Aquarius. Remember, this Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius could bring a lot of new people into your life and a lot of brand new ideas. But because this is retrograde, they may or may not last very long in your life. This Jupiter retrograde is going to be ending in the middle of October. With the moon in Aries sextile, keep in mind this has to do with your own emotional relationship to yourself, to your inner child, to your early childhood, your beginnings. And so something from that self-exploration might be aiding you in forming new social groups at this time. Later into the evening, the moon in Aries is going to square Pluto retrograde in the sign of Capricorn. So on Wednesday the 22nd, we do have a couple of cardinal squares, and they are going to be about 12 hours apart. 12 hours apart. 12 hours apart. 12 hours apart. As I've mentioned plenty of times now, Pluto retrograde in Capricorn can create volatility in the job market. And where we have this moon in Aries square, that is putting a focus on the needs of the self. Aries is I am. And this can also have to do with beginnings. These beginnings being very tentative because Pluto is retrograde right now. And finally, later into the evening hours, when the moon in Aries goes void of course, it will be in opposition to Mercury in its shadow period in Libra. And this is going to tie up a lot of these energies on Wednesday the 22nd. As I mentioned before, Mercury in Libra can have to do with contracts, can have to do with communication about legal matters or partnerships, or reaching equanimity. And where we have opposition with the moon in Aries, there might be emotional needs of the self that will be tugging at you at this time. Do remember that many of the traits of this lunar mansion are very good for working out contracts. And this might be a good final opportunity before the retrograde begins on Friday for you to finalize any paperwork that you've already been working on. It is a good time to seek favor and a good time for appeasement and pacification. On Thursday, the 23rd, the moon will be entering the third lunar mansion, which is Althoraya. This lunar mansion is denoted by the Pleiades, just a small star cluster near the shoulder of the constellation of Taurus. And the themes of this lunar mansion have to do with universal nature, auspicious fortune, fire of transformation, creative energy, beauty, and abundance. Abundance, abundance, abundance. Thursday can be a very abundant day if you are working with Jupiterian energies as well. So if you want to put together some kind of spell work for increase, this would be an alright time. Do keep in mind, however, that the full moon having been on Monday, you will be working with the waning gibbous moon. The waning gibbous moon. Very, very early on Thursday the 23rd, there will be an opposition between Venus, which is in the sign of Scorpio, having to do with other people's possessions, and Uranus, which can have to do with iconoclasts and can also have to do with things that are among a group. Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. Taurus having a focus on financial stability, and therefore these oppositional energies occurring very early in the morning on Thursday the 23rd. Remember that Venus in Scorpio can have a tendency toward emotional manipulation, and that Uranus is retrograde in Taurus right now, and there is a focus there on comfort, stability, and what might be best for the entire group. What might be best for the entire group. Not too long after this opposition, the moon is going to enter the sign of Taurus. So that's going to be about 3 hours later. In the middle of the morning, the moon in Taurus is going to quincunx the sun, which is now in the sign of Libra. And this quincunx could drive some action. The moon in Taurus is a very cozy, comfortable kind of an energy. Cozy and comfortable. Whereas the sun in Libra is focused on balance. So together, in the middle of the morning, on Thursday the 23rd, this might drive some action toward stability, balance, and comfort. Stability, balance, and comfort. Later in the evening, the moon in Taurus is then going to be quincunx Mars in Libra. And remember that this Mars in Libra energy is going to be a lot like the Sun in Libra energy, but more aggressive with its points of view and with its need for justice, almost at any cost. Now remember that the moon in Taurus is going to have an emphasis on comfort. So anybody who is uncomfortable might be pushing at this time for greater equanimity. And finally, on into the night on Thursday, September 23rd. The moon in Taurus is going to square Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. This is really going to put a culmination on a lot of the themes we've seen throughout the day on the 23rd. There is an energy of the fire of transformation, a lot of creative energy, beauty, and abundance being brought in by the lunar mansion. But we are also dealing with issues of equanimity, dealing with people in groups and the hierarchies of those groups, especially with Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. And having started out the day very early with that opposition with Venus in Scorpio and Uranus in Taurus, which is retrograde also. A lot of these retrogrades could have us revisiting things that we consider already resolved. So keep an eye out for such things on Thursday, September 23rd. And now we're moving on to Friday, September 24th. We'll be in the 4th lunar mansion, which is Aldebaran, the follower. And Aldebaran is a giant red star within the constellation of Taurus. The themes of this lunar mansion are primal material, discord, enmity, chaotic substance, ill will, hindrance. It follows the Pleiades and is closely aligned with the energy of the planet Mars. We don't have any transits specifically between the moon and Mars on Friday the 24th. But we did have a quincunx the previous day between the moon in Taurus and Mars in Libra. So you could see some follow up to those events. And because of the overarching energy of the fourth lunar mansion of Aldebaran, I would advise you to be very careful with your enemies. We only have a couple of transits today. One is in the morning, kind of in the middle of the morning, toward noon. And that is that the moon and our retrograde Uranus are going to be conjunct in the sign of Taurus. And this could be very good for people working out emotions regarding jointly held property and situations where there is a joint investment in comfort and stability. This can also apply to your apartment building, for example, or possibly even have a little bit to do with your neighborhood, depending on the joint investment put into that situation. Clubs, associations, possibly. Those are slightly more to Aquarius, but when there is any kind of petty cash fund involved, that would be Uranus in Taurus also. Later in the day, so this is going to be in the early part of the afternoon, we're going to have an opposition between the moon in Taurus and Venus in Scorpio. And remember that this Venus in Scorpio energy can be very sexually dark and can also be emotionally manipulative. So there could be a time where you want to be comfortable, you are seeking out comfort, and there is a situation where someone is either being sexually or emotionally manipulative. So be very careful of that on the afternoon of Friday the 24th, especially because we are dealing with the lunar mansion of the follower, someone hunting the Pleiades. Alright, let's move on now to Saturday. That is September 23rd. Saturday, September 23rd. And the fifth lunar mansion will be in the moon's transit for Saturday, September 23rd. The fifth lunar mansion is Al-Haka, and that means the white spot, and it refers to 3 stars which are located in the head of the constellation of Orion. And the themes of this lunar mansion: we have universal body, favor, intellectual activity, health, goodwill, and safety. So overall, a very favorable lunar mansion for Saturday the 25th. Right after midnight on the West Coast and a little bit after 3 a.m. on the East Coast, there's going to be a sextile between the moon in Taurus and Neptune, which is retrograde in the sign of Pisces. And this is an excellent time to track your dreams and to have revelations while in the dream state, okay? Remember that the moon in Taurus puts a focus on, I'm hearing safety, but specifically stability. So this might have to do with learning something about ways to improve your safety. There is an opportune period also on Saturday, September 25th, that is going to begin at 3:49 a.m. on the West Coast and 6:49 a.m. on the East Coast of the United States. There is going to be a square between the moon in Taurus and Jupiter, which is retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius, Aquarius. So remember that Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius can be about expansion of one's social circle, either in real life or online, and that this square with the moon in Taurus may put an emphasis on your safety also. This opportune period is a good and constructive one, but remember that because Mercury is in its storm this week and will be going retrograde the following day, to focus on projects which you have already begun. This opportune period is going to last until the moon enters the sign of Gemini, and that will be occurring in the afternoon and evening, so 5:36 on the West Coast and 8:36 in the evening on the East Coast. That gives you most of the day to utilize this opportune period. Let's back up to 6 in the morning on the West Coast and 9 in the morning on the East Coast. We will have an earth trine between the moon, which is in Taurus, and Pluto, which is retrograde in the sign of Capricorn. And this will, of course, be within that opportune period and would be an excellent time to evaluate ways in which to utilize a career and changes in your career to improve the stability in your life and to improve your finances and your level of comfort. A little bit later in the morning, there's going to be a quincunx, and that's going to be between the moon in Taurus and Mercury in Libra. And remember that I've been saying that this Mercury in Libra energy can be about signing contracts, or can be about communication regarding legal cases, or working out the dynamics of partnerships also. So this quincunx, there might be a need for stability, and especially because Mercury will be going retrograde the following day. People might be trying to get certain things pinned down before that happens. They might be conscious of these things or they might not. In the middle of the afternoon, we're going to have an air trine, and that's going to be between Mars, which is in Libra. Remember, I said that's going to be an aggressive drive for justice. And Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. Aquarius, Aquarius, Aquarius. So where we have Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, it is ideal that it be trine to Mars in Libra, because that is a harmonious placement that is going to cause dynamic shift in a gentle and balanced way, ideally. Now we are working with Martian energies, and those can be unpredictable, volatile, and difficult to control. Keep in mind too that Mars having predominantly fiery energy, it is going to be fed by the pure oxygen of an air sign like Libra, and therefore burning even hotter. So, on the one hand, it is an air trine, but on the other hand, with Mars and Saturn involved, treat it a little bit carefully on the afternoon of Saturday, the 25th. And then finally, as I mentioned before, the ending of the opportune period is marked by the moon entering the sign of Gemini, and that's going to be occurring in the middle of the evening hours on Saturday, September 25th. Alright, so here we are finally at Sunday, September 26th. For all of you Virgo, Libra, cusp babies who have birthdays this week, I wish you an incredible solar return for the year of 2021. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, you know how much I love the fairy emoji. If you are still awake, I would appreciate it if you left me some fairy emojis in the comments of this video. No pressure, of course. The 6th lunar mansion is the mansion of Al-Hana, which is a little star of great light, and refers to two stars which are located in the feet of the constellation of Gemini. The themes of this lunar mansion are form, wisdom, bonds of attraction, affinity, friendship, and love. But remember, whenever we have strong feelings and strong bonds with another person, there is the potential for that to be reversed to hatred and vice versa. It's that old trope, enemies to lovers, to friends, to roommates, to enemies again. And we will start the day at midnight on the West Coast and 3 a.m. on the East Coast of the United States, where we have a trine. We have actually 3 trines and a sextile to help us out with the Mercury retrograde today. So that first trine is going to be between the moon in Gemini and the sun in the sign of Libra now. Wonderful partnership energy, very harmonious to the lunar mansion that we will be traversing. In the middle of the morning, there will be a trine between the moon in Gemini and Saturn retrograde in the sign of Aquarius, Aquarius. Now, this trine is going to be a little bit different, but that moon in Gemini energy and these bonds of partnership are very much going to help that Saturn retrograde where it is in the sign of Aquarius. Remember that I've said before that this has to do with the subversion of hierarchies, and when Saturn is retrograde in this sign, that the powers that be might be fighting very hard against these changes. So where we have a trine with the moon in Gemini and these very strong partnership energies, that will help all of us move forward together in progress. About an hour after that trine with Saturn, the moon in Gemini is going to be trine Mars in the sign of Libra. And this can be kind of an aggressive energy, a little unpredictable, but his heart is in the right place, desiring partnership and desiring equality and equanimity for all. So where we have this trine with the moon in Gemini, understanding partnerships and understanding the balance between us, not just among us, the group, but between us, each individual, so that we can segue gently into our afternoon transit, which is the moon in Gemini, sextile Chiron retrograde in Aries, healing any self-serving energies that are separating us from partnerships any selfishness or immaturity, any of those issues possibly coming back around again for us to finally lay to rest. And finally, the Mercury retrograde, which will be occurring at 10:10 p.m. on the west coast of the United States and at 1:10 a.m. on the east coast. And I urge you, if you have contracts to sign, not that you have to wait, but understand the limitations of the retrograde cycle. This retrograde will be lasting until about halfway through the month of October. Saturn will be going direct before the end of the Mercury retrograde, and Jupiter will be going direct on the same day that Mercury does in October. We will also have Pluto going direct much earlier in the month of October, so now all of these retrogrades are starting to speed back up again, and we will be getting back into the normal rotation of the orbits. Not that we are necessarily in an abnormal rotation. It really only has to do with our position here on Earth comparative to the orbits of these other planets. They are not actually going backward. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that. I'm not trying to act like you're stupid. I'm sure if you're watching my channel, you're very smart, right? Because I'm very smart. These periods are nothing to fear. And when you know how to work with the energies, it makes them much less scary than they might be otherwise. Just understand that the retrogrades will cause things to re-enter your life that you think you've banished for good, and anything occurring within the retrograde may, when the planet goes direct again, vanish into thin air. Thank you so much for joining me for the astrology for the week of September 20th through the 26th. If you enjoyed these messages, please let me know down in the comments. Your likes and your subscriptions are also greatly appreciated. I'm very close to 1,500 subscribers, and I will be doing a reading giveaway. So look down in the description for that link. And until we meet again, I look forward to seeing you again very soon.